If you've ever doubted that God watches over even the quietest souls, then listen closely. For 4 years, a dog sat by the side of a lonely road through storms, hunger, and silence, waiting. He had no voice, but his faith never wavered, and one morning, after countless prayers left unspoken, a miracle arrived. The morning air was laced with the scent of pine and damp earth. A pale fog blanketed the outskirts of Fairgrove, a small town tucked between the rolling hills of Oregon and the whispering trees of its evergreens. It was late autumn, and the sun had only begun to rise, casting long, gold-tinged shadows across the dew-slick pavement. The sky wore a tired gray, and the frost clung gently to the tall grass swaying beside the road. At the edge of Route 17, right where the town's only gas station had shuttered years ago, sat a golden retriever with a coat dulled by time and dust. His fur, once a bright amber, had faded into a soft, weathered cream, streaked with streaks of mud and soot. His name was Rusty, not because of the color of his coat, but because he'd once been full of life, always running, always chasing, and now he sat unmoving like a forgotten relic. His body was lean, ribs slightly visible beneath his thick fur, and his eyes, a deep soulful brown, were fixed on the stretch of road ahead, unwavering and eternal. Locals had long given up trying to coax Rusty away. They called him the Ghost of Highway 17, or, more tenderly, the Watcher. No one remembered exactly when he arrived, only that one day he was there, curled up beneath the rusted out-of-service sign beside the gas pumps. And then he never left. Rusty didn't bark, he didn't growl, he didn't chase cars or beg for food. He just waited. Each morning, around 6:30 a.m., an aging red pickup truck would slow to a halt beside the diner across the street. The door would open with a familiar creak, and out would step Carol Jenkins, 58 years old, owner of Sunrise Diner, and unofficial guardian of the dog no one could reach. Carol was a petite woman, with wide shoulders and wiry strength in her arms. Her gray hair was always pulled back in a firm ponytail, and her face, though worn from long shifts and hard winters, held a persistent warmth, especially in her eyes. She walked with the resolve of someone who had raised 2 sons alone, buried a husband too young, and still managed to keep the town's only diner running for over 2 decades. She always carried the same thing with her in the mornings, a brown paper bag and a thermos of coffee. The coffee was for her. The bag held 2 slices of bacon, a piece of toast, and occasionally scrambled eggs, Rusty's breakfast. Without fail, she would cross the road and place the bag gently near the base of the gas pump. She never tried to approach him. That lesson had been learned the first winter. "You've got your rules, I've got mine," she would say softly, her voice gravelly, yet kind. But even God gave manna in the wilderness, didn't he? Rusty never ate while she watched, but by the time Carol finished opening the diner 15 minutes later, the bag would always be empty. The only evidence of his presence was a neatly folded napkin licked clean and those same eyes still locked on the horizon. The townsfolk had all seen him by now. Every school bus, every delivery truck, every police cruiser had driven past the scene, a golden silhouette at dawn, framed by mist and silence. Some said he was waiting for a dead owner. Others claimed he had escaped from a nearby ranch and had simply forgotten how to leave. A few thought he had gone mad, but no one ever chased him off. There had been attempts, of course. 4 years was a long time. One summer, a young family traveling through Fairgrove had tried to leash him and take him along. The moment the leash clicked near his collar, Rusty had bolted across the lot, narrowly avoiding traffic, before circling back to sit beneath the pump again. Another time, a dog rescue group brought tranquilizers. Carol stopped them at the edge of the road. "You don't understand," she told them. "He's not lost. He's waiting." They didn't believe her. But they never came back either. No one knew Rusty's past, and he offered no clues. There was no collar, no microchip records had ever surfaced, just a dog with a quiet soul and the patience of a saint. On this particular morning, as Carol returned inside and poured herself the first cup of burnt coffee for the day, she gazed out the window. Rusty was still there. She allowed herself a faint smile. Behind the counter, Tommy Wells, her part-time help, a scrawny 19-year-old with an unruly mop of black hair and permanent oil stains on his jeans, wiped down the booths half-heartedly. "You think he's ever going to leave?" Tommy asked without looking up. Carol sipped her coffee. He'll leave when whoever he's waiting for comes back. Tommy raised an eyebrow. That's a long time to wait. Carol's voice softened. Some waits are worth it. At that moment, outside the diner, a large delivery truck rumbled by. Rusty didn't flinch. He didn't turn his head or twitch an ear. He simply sat, golden against the growing brightness of morning, his breath visible in the cold air. It was quiet again, and he was still waiting. Ethan sipped the coffee slowly, his gaze drifting through the fogged diner window toward the quiet gas station across the road. The dog was still there, sitting exactly where he had been an hour ago, not lying down, not sniffing the air, just watching, as though that patch of cracked pavement was a sacred vigil no one else could understand. He turned back toward the counter, leaning forward slightly. "How long has he been out there?" he asked. Carol didn't look up from wiping the mugs behind the bar. "Longer than most people stay in this town," she said, a trace of weariness in her voice. 4 years now. Same spot, same time, every day." 4 years, Ethan repeated, his pen stalling above the notebook in front of him. "Mm-hmm," she nodded. "Showed up one spring morning like he'd just walked in from a different world. Sat down by pump number 3 and never left." Ethan jotted the detail down. "No one claimed him? No collar, no chip. We checked. Animal control came once. He ran off but came back the next day. Since then, we've just let him be." He looked again at the motionless shape outside. "Why do you think he stays?" Carol finally turned to him. "You ever lose someone, Mr. Riley?" Ethan hesitated, caught off guard. "Yes." "Then maybe you already know the answer." She set down the last mug and walked to refill the pot. "He's waiting. That much is clear." "But for who?" Ethan whispered. Carol didn't respond. She didn't need to. Ethan finished his coffee in silence, then stood, slipping his notebook back into his coat pocket. "Thank you," he said. She gave a slight nod. "You'll be back tomorrow." He paused at the door. "What makes you say that?" "Because you're already hooked, just like the rest of us." The bell jingled behind him as he stepped out into the cold air. Back across the street, Rusty hadn't moved. The clouds were darkening now, and wind tugged gently at the fur along his back. But his posture didn't falter. Ethan didn't approach. Instead, he took a slow walk around the gas station's perimeter. The pumps were rusted. The signs faded. The building itself was padlocked and overgrown. But there was a spot where the gravel had been worn smooth from repetition. The exact place where Rusty sat every day. The ground remembered him. That night, Ethan returned to his motel room and opened his laptop. He searched for public records, shelter databases, pet forums, anything that might link a golden retriever to this town 4 years ago. But the results were sparse. Most articles were about community events, school closures, minor flooding. The dog, it seemed, had slipped beneath every radar. He checked Google Images and found a few old blog posts with low-resolution photos of Rusty, each with captions like, "Sad dog by the gas station," or "Seen this guy near Fairgrove?" But there were no answers, just fragments. He made a list in his notebook. Shows up in spring 4 years ago. Always same spot. Eats but never interacts. Avoids contact but not aggressive. No chip, no collar, no known owner. Ethan stared at the list. Something didn't fit. Rusty wasn't just a stray. He wasn't behaving like a feral animal. He wasn't roaming, scavenging, or howling at night. He had routine. He had focus. Dot. The next morning, Ethan rose before the sun. He dressed in silence and stepped outside into the misty chill. From the far end of the motel parking lot, he could already see the golden figure across the road, silhouetted against the faintest blue of dawn. Same place, same pose, same unshakable watch. Ethan crossed his arms, a strange sense of reverence coming over him. Whatever this dog was waiting for, Ethan knew one thing for certain. It hadn't come yet, and he was going to find out why. The morning air was sharp, thinner than usual, the kind that settled in your lungs and made you breathe deeper just to feel it. Ethan Riley sat cross-legged on the bed of his motel room, a lukewarm cup of coffee in one hand, his laptop balanced on the other knee. The curtain to his left was half pulled, letting in a gray wash of light from the overcast sky outside. Beyond the glass, he could just make out the faint silhouette of Rusty still posted at his usual station, as constant as the wind in Fairgrove. The previous night had been long and restless. Ethan's dreams had been strange. Flickering lights, a screech of tires, then silence. He wasn't sure if it was his subconscious or just the weight of this mystery beginning to settle into his bones. But something had shifted. There was a sense of direction now, however faint. He opened his browser again and typed the words he'd entered before, only now with sharper filters. Accident, Fairgrove, 2019, Highway 22. Several articles surfaced. Local traffic updates, weather advisories, a few minor incidents. But buried near the bottom of the search results, on an old community news blog, was a short entry from May 3, 2019. Local family survives rollover on County Road 87. A family of 3 was involved in a single-vehicle crash just outside Fairgrove on County Road 87, not far from the highway junction. The report listed no fatalities, but noted that the family dog was reportedly lost during the chaos and has not been recovered. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The article included names: Benjamin and Claire Cooper and their son Liam, age 10 at the time. They'd been on their way home from visiting relatives when their SUV hit a patch of rain-slick pavement and rolled into a ditch. The family had been treated and released within a few days. The dog, a golden retriever named Rusty, had been reported missing but never found. He stared at the screen for a long moment, the lines of text burning into his memory. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was more than he'd had yesterday. Much more. He reached for his notebook and jotted down the names, dates, and location. Then he leaned back, exhaling slowly, the shape of something taking form in his mind. A knock startled him. He stood and opened the door to find a man in his late 50s with a sturdy build, pale denim jacket, and hands calloused from years of work. His face was rugged, with a heavy jaw and short-cropped silver hair. His name tag read Rick Garrison, and behind him was a county utility truck. "You're the guy asking around about the dog?" Rick asked, voice low and direct. Ethan nodded. "I am. You know him?" Rick scratched his chin. "Know of him. Can't miss him, really. But I might have seen him before, back when I worked part-time with the volunteer fire department." Ethan stepped aside and gestured for Rick to come in. "Please?" Rick entered slowly, standing near the desk. "About 4 years ago, we responded to a rollover out near County 87. Wet road, bad corner, SUV had flipped twice, whole family inside, lucky to be alive. We pulled them out. Little boy wouldn't stop crying, said he lost his dog." Ethan felt a chill in his fingers. "Golden retriever?" Rick nodded. "Yeah, beautiful animal. Must have gotten spooked and ran into the woods. We looked, spent hours. Thought maybe a coyote got him. There were no signs." Ethan sat down, his voice calm but firm. "Did you ever see the dog again?" Rick paused. "I didn't think so, until I drove through town last year and saw him sitting out by the gas station. Just sitting. Didn't click at first. But the way he looked at the road, it reminded me." "He's still there," Ethan said. "Every day." Rick's expression darkened. "He's waiting." Ethan picked up his phone. "Do you know where that family went?" Rick shook his head. "Moved away not long after. Word was they left Oregon, maybe Idaho. I never saw them again." Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon calling the local animal control office, and eventually reached a woman named Darla Green, a tired-sounding but helpful clerk with a sharp voice and the habit of muttering while she typed. He explained the situation, gave her the date and the names. "Hang on," she said. Clicks of a keyboard followed. "Yeah, here it is. A report filed by Claire Cooper, dog named Rusty, male golden retriever, went missing after a vehicle accident, marked as unresolved." "Do you have contact information?" Ethan asked. "I can't give that out, but I can forward a message if you'd like to leave one." He gave her his name, number, and a brief note, then leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. The pieces were starting to come together. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the wind picked up through the thinning trees, Ethan stood once more across from the gas station. Rusty was there, still and faithful, staring down the darkening road. Ethan whispered under his breath, "I think I found them." But Rusty didn't move. He simply watched. The sky that morning was a pale veil of silver, stretched across Fairgrove like a quiet pause between storms. Ethan Riley stood alone by the shoulder of County Road 17, the old gas station at his back, camera poised in his hands. Ahead of him, Rusty sat in his familiar spot, his silhouette outlined in morning mist. The golden retriever's fur had grown shaggy along his neck and shoulders, and there were flecks of white around his muzzle now, ghosts of time etched in silence. Ethan crouched down, adjusting the lens with care. He didn't need to stage anything. There were no tricks, no commands, no perfect lighting required. Rusty, in his stillness, was already poetry. He pressed record. "This is Rusty," Ethan began in a low voice. "He has waited here, on the same patch of ground, for over 4 years. Through scorching heat, hail, snow, and silence, he hasn't moved. He watches every car that passes. He doesn't chase. He doesn't follow. He waits." Rusty didn't even flick an ear at the sound of Ethan's voice. His gaze remained forward, unmoving, eternal. He was someone's dog. He had a name, a home, a boy who once hugged him like he'd never let go. Something happened, and since then, he's been here, remembering what the rest of the world forgot. Ethan paused the recording. He captured a few close-up shots, the deep brown of Rusty's eyes, the way his fur moved slightly with the wind, the small indentation in the ground where he lay every day. Then he packed up and returned to the motel. Back in his room, Ethan edited the footage with practiced hands. No music, just ambient sound. Wind, a distant crow, the low hum of passing trucks. The story didn't need embellishment, it needed honesty. He titled the video, "The Dog Who Waited 4 Years." The description read simply, "If this dog looks familiar, please help us find who he's waiting for. Fairgrove, Oregon." Within an hour of posting, the video began to spread. By lunchtime, it had 4,000 views. By nightfall, it had passed 40,000. Comments poured in from all over the country. Some were emotional. "This broke me. He reminds me of my childhood dog." "Someone please go hug him. This kind of loyalty makes me believe again." Others were filled with offers to adopt, help, or donate. But Ethan didn't reply. Not yet. He sat by the window of his room, the glow of his laptop screen reflected in the glass, watching the numbers tick upward. The world was noticing Rusty, and he wasn't sure how he felt about that. Later that evening, he returned to the Sunrise Diner. Carol refilled his coffee without asking. She didn't say anything about the video, but the way she looked at him, warmer, sharper, told him she'd seen it. "The internet's talking about Rusty now," she said finally, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yeah," Ethan said softly, louder than I expected. "He doesn't know," she added. "He just keeps waiting." "I know." Carol looked at him for a moment. "You sure this is what he needs?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know what he needs. I just know someone out there might know him. And maybe they're waiting too. They just don't know he's still here." That night, back in his room, Ethan lay awake in bed. His phone buzzed beside him. A message notification. Instagram comment from user Liam_C14. "I think this is Rusty. Our Rusty. He looks older, but I'd recognize him anywhere." Ethan sat upright. His heart leapt into his throat. He clicked on the account. It was public. Photos of hiking trips, a boy's bedroom with football trophies, game consoles, and in the third row, a blurry but undeniable picture of a young boy hugging a golden retriever. Ethan opened it. Same almond-shaped eyes, same small scar above the right brow, same coat, just cleaner, younger, full of light. It was him. Ethan scrolled to the bio. Liam Cooper, 14 Vertical Bar, Bend, Oregon. He checked the timestamp on the dog photo, April 2019. He pulled up his notes. The same month as the accident. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should he message him? Was it really him? Could it just be wishful thinking? He didn't wait. He opened a new tab and began digging deeper. School district records, regional white pages. He searched for Claire Cooper, the name from the accident report. There were a few listings in Bend. One had a home address listed with a private landline. He didn't call. Not yet. Instead, he returned to Liam's account. He clicked into the boy's most recent post, a sunset photo with the caption, "Everything changes except the way I miss him." Ethan stared at the screen, breath shallow. He pressed the message icon. "Liam, my name is Ethan Riley. I think I've found your dog." He sent it. And waited. No reply came that night. Outside, Rusty was still there, And somehow, Ethan knew. They both were holding their breath for the same reason. In a quiet neighborhood on the west side of Bend, Oregon, the sun had barely begun to rise when Emma Cooper stood barefoot in her kitchen, wrapped in an oversized navy cardigan, her hands loosely gripping a chipped mug of black coffee. Her eyes, tired hazel with a hint of green, were fixed on the frosted window above the sink. She had barely slept. Emma Cooper was 41, with olive-toned skin that had dulled over the past few years, and soft laugh lines that no longer found much use. Her long, dark brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, with stray strands falling around her face. She used to wear makeup every morning, iron her clothes, and read poetry aloud with her son, Liam. But those days had faded into the quiet fog that followed the accident 4 years ago. Since then, everything about her had become quieter. Her walk, her voice, even the way she cried. There was always something held back, unfinished. She had seen the video late the night before, after Liam burst into her room holding his phone. His voice had been trembling. "Mom, I think that's Rusty." She had taken the phone from his hand, trying not to let hope bloom too fast, too violently. But the second she saw the dog in the video, sitting by the highway with those same soulful eyes and familiar stance, she knew. Her hands had started to shake. That was hours ago. She hadn't slept since. Now, with the pale morning sun stretching across the tiled floor, Emma picked up her phone and found the number listed in the message from the man, Ethan Riley. Her thumb hovered for a long moment. Then she tapped, "Call." The line rang once, twice, then, "This is Ethan." Emma drew in a breath. "Mr. Riley, my name is Emma Cooper. My son Liam, he showed me the message you sent." There was a pause, and for a second her voice broke. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady the wave inside her. "I saw your video," she whispered, "and I need to ask. Please tell me that's him. Tell me Rusty's still alive." From across the state in Fairgrove, Ethan stood beside his motel window, looking out at the distant form of Rusty, still perched faithfully near pump number 3. "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said gently. "He's here. He never left." The sob that broke from Emma's lips was small but sharp. 4 years of silent grief, of explaining to her son why they never found Rusty, of telling herself he was probably gone, came tumbling out in that single exhale. Ethan waited, letting her feel it. Emma wiped her face and composed herself. "We're coming," she said. "Right now. I don't care how long it takes. It's about 8 hours, maybe more. I need to see him again." Ethan gave her the address of the gas station and told her not to rush. "He's not going anywhere," he said. "He's still waiting." After the call ended, Emma rushed to Liam's room. The boy was already half-dressed, sneakers in hand, his face pale and wide-eyed. "Was it him?" he asked. Emma nodded, her voice catching. "We're going to see Rusty." Back in Fairgrove, Ethan slipped on his coat and made his way to the familiar corner of the old highway. The sky had turned bright with morning, and the scent of pine filled the cool air. Rusty sat where he always had, facing east, golden fur rippling in the breeze like a flag still flying. Ethan crouched beside him. "They're on their way, boy," he said softly. "You hung on just long enough." Rusty didn't move, but his ears twitched, his nose lifted slightly, as if some ancient instinct told him that something long lost was finally returning. At noon, Carol from the diner crossed the street with a bundle wrapped in plaid fabric. Her cheeks were pink from the wind, her silver-gray hair pulled back into a low ponytail. She said nothing at first, only set the bundle beside Ethan. "I heard," she said finally. Ethan looked up. "You always hear everything, don't you?" "I own the only diner within 10 miles, dear. Gossip lives in my salt shakers." She cracked a smile, then nodded at the bundle. "There's a fleece blanket in there, and roast chicken. I figured he shouldn't go home empty-stomached." Ethan touched the blanket gently. "Thank you." Carol stared at Rusty for a long while. "He never gave up. Not once. I don't know what kind of love can survive like that." "Maybe the kind we don't deserve," Ethan murmured. As the sun began its slow descent behind the hills, Ethan sat with Rusty wrapped partially in the blanket. The golden retriever leaned just slightly against him now, not enough to press, but enough to trust. He had eaten most of the food, and the wind had begun to settle. The stars appeared one by one. Ethan whispered into the night, "They're coming, Rusty." Just a little longer. And Rusty waited, the same way he always had, quietly, faithfully, with a heart too big for his body. The dawn broke gently over Fairgrove, washing the pine-covered hills in a soft amber hue. The sky, still damp with morning dew, carried the kind of hush that felt sacred, like the world was holding its breath. Outside the old gas station, Ethan stood bundled in his coat, a thermos of black coffee in one hand and his camera dangling unused at his side. He hadn't slept. Neither had Rusty. The golden retriever sat upright, unusually alert, his ears perked with every passing car, every crunch of gravel in the distance. There was a visible tension in the dog's posture, something taut and coiled, like a violin string waiting to be plucked. His nose twitched in the air, as if memory had a scent. Then, as if struck by lightning, Rusty jolted to his feet. Ethan turned sharply, following the dog's sudden burst of focus. Down the road, headlights crested the hill. A dark blue SUV approached slowly, its tires crackling along the worn pavement. It came to a stop just before the gas station. The engine shut off. The passenger door opened, and out stepped Liam Cooper. Now 14, Liam was tall for his age, lean with the lankiness of early adolescence. His shaggy, sun-bleached brown hair fell messily over his eyes. He wore a gray hoodie and jeans, hands trembling slightly as he stepped forward, sneakers crunching against the gravel. Behind him, his mother Emma emerged, her face pale and strained from the overnight drive. Daniel, Liam's father, stayed beside the car, a hand resting on the roof, his expression unreadable. Liam took one hesitant step, then another. Rusty stared. For half a second, time broke. Then, with an explosion of movement, Rusty let out a sharp, breathless bark, a sound no one in town had ever heard from him. His tail wagged with such force that his entire body swayed. He charged forward, paws kicking up dirt, golden fur streaming behind him like sunlight in motion. "Rusty!" Liam cried, voice cracking under the weight of memory. The boy dropped to his knees just as Rusty barreled into him, burying his face in Liam's chest, whimpering, licking, pushing, crying. It wasn't a reunion, it was a return. A missing piece snapped back into place, and the entire world seemed to exhale. Liam wrapped his arms tightly around Rusty, tears running freely down his face. He whispered something, words only Rusty could hear. The dog responded with another joyful bark, then collapsed into Liam's lap, tail thumping like a drumbeat of homecoming. From across the street, the people of Fairgrove began to gather. Carol stood at the edge of the diner porch, apron still on, one hand clutching a dish towel pressed to her lips. Behind her, old Mr. Abernathy from the hardware store leaned on his cane. Teenagers, shopkeepers, even a mailman, people drawn by the viral video or by instinct, watched silently as the moment unfolded. No one spoke. Then someone clapped. It started as a single tentative clap from a young girl near the diner, then another, and another. The clapping grew into applause, gentle, respectful, but filled with awe. A woman wiped away tears. A man hugged his son tighter. Emma placed her hand on her heart, eyes shimmering. Daniel stepped forward now, silent tears brimming, and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. Ethan filmed none of it. He couldn't. His hands were frozen by the lump in his throat and the sacredness of the moment. Carol stepped forward, whispering mostly to herself. He waited for the right one. All this time, it was him. Rusty didn't leave Liam's side. Even as the boy stood, the dog circled him protectively, pressing against his legs, as if afraid this was another dream that would vanish when he blinked. Emma knelt beside them, running her hand down Rusty's back. "You came back to us," she whispered. "You brave, beautiful boy." They sat there together, mother, son, and dog, as the town watched in silence. Later, as people returned to their routines, Ethan approached Liam. The boy looked up, eyes red but smiling. "Thank you," Liam said. Ethan smiled back. "No, buddy, thank him." The road back to Bend was quiet. Rusty lay curled in the back seat of the Cooper family's SUV, his head resting in Liam's lap, eyes half closed, but never quite asleep. Liam, now freshly washed and wrapped in a clean gray hoodie, had both arms around him protectively, as if anchoring the dog physically to this reality, to the fact that they were no longer separated by years or highways or chance. Emma sat in the passenger seat, her expression calm but watchful. The sharp edges of the overnight drive had softened, but not vanished. Occasionally she would look back through the rearview mirror and smile faintly at the sight of her son and the dog who had once been the heartbeat of their home. Daniel drove in silence, his hand steady on the wheel. He was a tall man with deep-set eyes, crow's feet etched from years of squinting under engine lights and long days in his garage. He didn't say much, but every so often he reached over to rest a hand gently on Emma's knee, a quiet language they had shared since college. When they finally pulled into the driveway of their suburban home, a pale blue single-story tucked beneath swaying pine trees, Rusty lifted his head. He stared at the front porch for a long time, unmoving. "Come on, Rusty," Liam said gently, opening the car door and stepping out. "We're home." Rusty jumped down, landed softly on the gravel, then followed Liam to the front steps. But when the door opened, the golden retriever didn't enter. Instead, he sat, right outside the threshold. He turned his head slowly, looking down the quiet street as if expecting a sound that never came. A distant engine, a returning figure, a voice that no longer existed. Liam stood beside him, confused. "It's okay, boy," he whispered. "This is your house now." Emma leaned in the doorway. "He remembers it," she said quietly, "but it's not the same." That night, Liam laid out an old beige rug by the front door, the one Rusty used to sleep on when he was just a puppy. He filled a bowl with fresh water, placed it nearby, and set a second blanket beside the rug. But Rusty didn't lie down on the blanket. He sat upright, tail curled neatly around his legs, and watched the road through the front window. Every few minutes, his ears would twitch toward the distant sound of a car or a neighbor's door, but his body stayed locked in place. By midnight, Liam had fallen asleep beside him. The boy had brought down a pillow and his sleeping bag. He didn't want Rusty to be alone. In the quiet of the living room, with the wind brushing softly against the windows and a nightlight glowing near the hall, the boy and his dog stayed there, side by side, breathing as one. Days passed. Rusty remained by the door. He ate when Liam fed him, he drank water, occasionally wagged his tail, and even barked once at a squirrel on the porch. But he never ventured deep into the house, not even to the couch where he used to nap. The scars of solitude, it seemed, were not only on his paws, but deep in his instincts. Emma watched from the kitchen one afternoon as Liam tried to coax Rusty into the hallway. "You can come inside, boy. It's okay now." Rusty took one step forward, but the sound of a passing truck outside made him flinch and retreat. His ears flattened, body tensing as he crouched near the doorframe. His eyes darted toward the road. Emma walked over, placed a warm hand on Liam's shoulder. "He's been alone for a long time," she said. "Sometimes, even when we come home, part of us is still lost." That night, as the streetlights flickered on and the world fell into hush again, Liam did something different. He crawled into his sleeping bag, pressed close to Rusty, and whispered, "I'm not going to leave you. If you want to wait, I'll wait with you." And so he did. Every night for a week. On the seventh night, something shifted. At around 3 a.m., Emma, who had been quietly tiptoeing to the kitchen for water, noticed it. Rusty had moved. He wasn't by the door anymore. Instead, he had climbed into Liam's sleeping bag, front legs draped protectively over the boy's chest, head resting near his neck. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her eyes welling up. Then she backed away quietly and let them be. The late afternoon sun bathed the Cooper backyard in a golden haze. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze, and the scent of pine mingled with freshly mowed grass. It was the kind of day that whispered peace into even the most restless souls. For the first time since they had brought Rusty home, Liam stood in the middle of the yard with no leash in hand. The wooden gate to the street had been left open, just a few inches, the way it always had been before everything changed. His fingers trembled slightly, but he kept his voice steady. "Go on, Rusty," he said, his smile unsure. "You're free." Rusty stood at the threshold of the porch, golden fur shining under the sunlight. Now a bit heavier, with a slight graying around his muzzle, he still held the majestic build of the retriever breed. Long legs, broad chest, and that eternally kind expression in his eyes. His ears twitched, tail wagging hesitantly. He stepped down onto the grass. It was cautious at first, slow movements like someone relearning how to trust the earth beneath their feet. His nose hovered just above the ground, sniffing the green blades, the wind. the traces of squirrels. Liam watched quietly, heart thudding with every inch Rusty moved further away. Near the fence, a balloon floated above a neighboring house. Unseen by them, a backyard birthday party was in full swing. Laughter, music, cake, and fireworks. Without warning, a sharp crack shattered the calm, then another, and another. The series of firework pops burst in quick succession, bright and erratic. They weren't loud enough to cause alarm for humans, but for Rusty, the sound was shrapnel. His entire body went rigid, his ears pinned back, eyes widened, breath hitched. Then the instinct of 4 years took hold. Flight. In a blur of gold, Rusty turned from the yard, bolted through the open gate and onto the street. The leashless freedom had become a cruel twist of fate. "Rusty!" Liam screamed, his voice rising with panic. "Rusty, wait! It's me! Come back!" The words flew across the neighborhood, breaking through screen doors, shattering the laughter next door. A few people turned from the party, startled by the sudden change in tone. Rusty kept running. He crossed the street, paws pounding against pavement, his breathing ragged. But as he neared the curb on the opposite side, a new sound chased him, one more familiar than any firework. It was Liam's voice, cracked and breaking. "Please, it's me, boy. It's me. Don't go again." Rusty skidded to a stop. His claws scraped the edge of the sidewalk. His body lowered in defense, then trembled, not from fear, but confusion. Slowly he turned. There, standing in the street behind him, was Liam. Small, fragile, tears falling down his cheeks, arms spread wide. Rusty's chest heaved, his gaze locked with the boy's, and something ancient stirred within him. Not memory, not instinct, but love. He trotted back, then faster, then running again, but this time toward home. Rusty collided with Liam's chest, burying his head into the boy's arms with a deep, shuddering whine. Liam fell to his knees, arms wrapping around his friend as tightly as he could. "I'm sorry," Liam whispered, pressing his face into Rusty's fur. "I should have held on. But you're here now. You're really here." From the doorway, Emma had watched it all unfold, frozen in place. Her husband stood beside her, one arm around her shoulder. Neither of them spoke. That night, Daniel hammered a stronger latch into the gate, not out of punishment, but out of understanding. The next few days were quiet, but something had shifted. Rusty began eating every meal without hesitation. He no longer curled by the front door, as if waiting for something to return. He began sleeping in his dog bed, an actual bed, next to Liam's. And at night, he didn't bolt upright at every engine, every passing siren. He lifted his head at the noise, eyes scanning the room, and then found Liam. And that was enough. No more panic. Just presence. Liam, too, had changed. He no longer checked the gate twice, no longer brought his pillow to the front rug. Instead, he taught Rusty how to play again, how to chase, how to lie on his back and beg for belly rubs. On Sunday morning, the sun rose over a dew-soaked yard. Liam stood barefoot in the grass, arms raised like wings. "Rusty! Come on, boy! Chase me!" Rusty didn't hesitate. He barked once, playful and loud, and ran. His tail wagged so hard it shook his back legs. He circled Liam, tongue lolling from the side of his mouth. He pounced forward, then back, then dropped to the ground in mock surrender, only to spring again. Emma and Daniel watched from the porch. She leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. Her hair was braided loosely to one side, gray streaks glinting under the light. Her voice, barely a breath, carried more weight than anything else that morning. "He's not waiting anymore," she said. "He's really come home. Sometimes God doesn't speak in thunder or part the seas. Sometimes he sends us a silent companion with golden fur and eyes full of waiting." Rusty didn't bark for attention. He didn't beg or chase. He just waited 4 long years in rain, in snow, in silence. And when the time was right, when the boy he loved called his name with all the faith in his heart, he returned. Perhaps that's how miracles work. They wait, and they come to those who still believe, even when there's no reason to. If this story touched your heart, we ask you to share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment below to tell us what part made you cry, smile, or whisper, "Thank you, Lord." And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of love, loss, and light. May God bless you today, and may you always remember, even after the longest silence, love can still find its way home.